This is the Halftime Show with Omar Adori on Pulse 95.
Sure is that time. It's the Halftime Show with Omar Adori. I'm your host, covering everything sport, international and local. Man, what a show we have in store for you today. My good dear friend, Dr. Rina, is in the building and she's going to be here talking to you about some fantastic things. We're talking about well-being. We're talking about mindset. We're talking about managing life stress. We're talking about mental health and we're talking about mental fitness. So if you have any questions for her, shoot them across the hour, 3 to 4 UAE time here on Pulse 95 Radio. And shout out to everyone who's tuned in around the world, whether it's 95 FM, pulse95radio.com, our app, Sharjah Broadcasting Authority, or if you're chilling at home watching us live on YouTube. This show is going to be banging, so make sure you don't go anywhere and stay tuned on the only place to be at 3, the Halftime Show on Pulse 95.
This is the Halftime Show with Omar Adori on Pulse 95.
Sure is that time. Thank you very much. It is that time. It's the Halftime Show with Omar Adori. I'm your host, covering everything sport, international and local. One of the topics we love talking about here on the show, and I try and use the platform as much as possible, try and raise awareness of it, is well-being, mental health, mental fitness. And who better than to have the lady herself, Dr. Rina. Dr. Rina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Omar. I'm so hyped to be here. I'm so excited.
I'm happy you're here too. I'm super happy you're here. For those that don't know, we did a show in lockdown.
We did.
And it was really powerful.
Very. So Instagram Live during lockdown. You know, lockdown had a big impact on people's mental health and their well-being. Mm-hmm. And I think it was just useful to hear discussions around how people were coping. Yeah. So, you know, I don't think we can underestimate the power of conversation.
Yeah.
It's so powerful just to normalize things.
Yeah. And not only that, for what you do, counseling psychologist, which is fantastic. I've got so much admiration. I'm such a huge fan. You get to listen. You get to also help a lot of people. How has that changed over the last couple of years, if even so?
What I have found is that more people are now open to talking about mental health and well-being. So, you know, what we saw during lockdown was an increase in things like anxiety, a shift in people's mood, because they didn't have the usual coping mechanisms that they had pre-COVID. I think one of the great things, if we can say that about lockdown, is it did create a sense of empathy. So previously, I think there was much more of a stigma around mental health. But now people are more open to talking about it. We're here talking about it today on a radio station.
Yeah. You said coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
I love that choice of word, coping. How has that opened people's eyes?
So for me, I see mental health as being on a spectrum. It's something that fluctuates. It can fluctuate daily. It can fluctuate monthly. And that's going to be really individual for everyone. And I always focus on coping rather than cure. So it's not about perfection, but it's about understanding what's going on for you in your mind, in your body, and what you need in order to feel or cope better. So, you know, it's normal, for example, to feel anxious at times, but how do you then bring yourself back to a state of balance? And sometimes coping is linking in with the right people.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about journaling. Sometimes it might be going for a walk. So it's really individual. And I think when you get to know yourself, you get to understand what helps you to cope on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. And something that we talk about here a lot is prevention over cure.
100%.
When it comes down to mental well-being, what are the things we can do to prevent us from having to resort to just curing?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I always say is that we need to now move into a state of reflection rather than reaction. So well-being essentially is just the way that we're functioning. It's a link between our feelings and our thoughts and what we do. Often we get caught on the behavior, but there are things that we can do for our feelings and also our thoughts. So I'd encourage people to start to make really small changes to their day. Start by just checking in with yourself in the morning. So if you think about a traffic light system, are you red, yellow or green today? And that will then link you in with what you need. And you can kind of check in throughout the day. So you want to proactively reflect on what you're thinking and what you're feeling, not just what you're doing.
Are there things you have to stay away from as soon as you wake up before you switch the traffic lights on?
All right, I think, you know, some people ask me about social media, for example, like, is it good or is it bad?
Yeah.
And I don't think anything's good or bad, but I think we need to recognize the impact on us. So things like social media and technology, give yourself a bit of space. You know, if you can, just notice why you want to use it. Is it a habit? Is it something that you're consciously using? And check in with yourself. If you're feeling worse after you use social media in the morning, then don't do it. Start with something else. So my routine, for example, is I wake up and I start in a state of gratitude. So I'll sit there and I'll write down 10 things that I'm grateful for. And then I might move into productivity. A couple of things that I want to achieve today. And that's it. Then I might go to social media and look at Instagram.
At least you're honest. Clarity is something that is mentioned a lot when starting off the day. It's important not to hold things over or carry things over from the previous night or day before. What are things we can do just to make sure we start off with clarity?
Sure. So I think bedtime routine is really important. So if you can, do limit the amount of technology that you're using just before you go to bed. Create some consistency, because even if there's lots of unpredictability in the world, I see those moments of consistency like anchors. So they kind of just anchor us. We know that there's something predictable at the beginning and end of our day, even if the rest of the day is a little bit up and down. So what you can do is do something like journaling. And this is really good for people who have racing thoughts before they go to sleep. Because often what happens in the day is you're so distracted that you keep going and keep going and keep going, and then you stop, and then everything that you've avoided, including your thoughts, come back. So I say just take a couple of minutes just to journal and just freestyle. Whatever comes up is okay.
I like that.
And if you are overthinking it, use your non-dominant hand. So if you're right-handed, go to your left, and if you're left-handed, go to your right. And this will get you out of your logic and sort of into your emotion. If you don't want to write words down, you can use drawings, or you can just scribble, or some sort of expression. And then you choose what to do. You can either shut the book and put it in a drawer, tear up the paper, or come back to it tomorrow morning when you are in a different state of mind.
Talk to me about using the least dominant hand. I've never heard that before. That's super interesting. How does that help?
So it takes you out of your kind of logic and the overthinking.
Right.
Because it puts you more into like a childlike state.
Yes.
So, you know, even if you're writing an emotive letter, sometimes people find it hard to get started. So try it. Try your non-dominant hand and see how that works for you.
Oh, I love that. And that was just segment 1. And we're talking well-being, mental health, mental fitness here on Pulse 95 Radio with Dr. Rina on the Halftime Show. And that was just the first segment. You're not going to get spoiled today. We've got 3 more coming up straight after the break. We're going to play some Only You, Meta Gims, and we'll be right back after this. Keep the tunes going.
This is the Halftime Show with Omar Adori on Pulse 95.
That time. You know when you hear that time and you hear that chant, it is the Halftime Show on Pulse 95 Radio with your boy Omar Adori, the host of the Halftime Show, and the fantastic guest, Dr. Rina, counseling psychologist, who is shedding bombs of knowledge on the show already. And if you're lucky to be tuned in on the Instagram live behind the scenes, like Masood from India, who's a regular, asked his question, then please do use this hour to get as much information and knowledge of this lovely sister right here. Dr. Rina, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's been great to have you on. I feel like we've known each other for a long time. We have to give a special shout out to Nina as well, who connected us, and wish you were here, Nina. And Dr. Rina is definitely representing 100%. Doctor, I want to ask you, mindset.
Yes.
Managing life stresses. There's so many things that people have had to face, challenges, obstacles. What are tips you can give them to help manage life stresses?
Sure. So let me ask you a question, Omar. Okay, how many thoughts do you think we have in a day?
Oh, that's a great question. A lot. I can't even put a
rough
number.
estimate?
Are we in the 1,000 mark?
We are in the 1,000 mark.
Yeah, I'd say about 1,000.
Much higher. So we have between 70,000 and 90,000 thoughts a day.
On average?
On average.
Okay.
And 95% of our thoughts are the same as the day before, and the day before, and the day before.
Okay.
So most of our thoughts become automatic.
Yeah.
So when we think about mindset, we're really thinking about the state of our mind, which includes our thoughts.
Yeah.
So often people feel like the thing that they have the least control over is their thoughts. But in fact, it's the thing you have the most control over. Okay. So your thoughts can either spiral you up or spiral you down. So what I'd encourage people to do is check in with their thoughts. So are your thoughts skewed more towards the negative or more towards the positive? And as you start to tune in, think of it like background music that you're tuning into. You can start to say, actually, do I like this song? Is it working for me?
Yeah.
Do I want to scratch the tune up? Do I want to change it? Do I want to change the record?
Yeah.
So you decide what happens to your thoughts.
Okay.
And if you are noticing that you're getting more negative thoughts, then what you can do is start to do what we call thought challenging or thought balancing. So what's the real evidence for your thought? Not what you think, not what it feels like, but real evidence. If you were to present your thought to a judge and say, you know what, judge, without any doubt, 100% this thought is true. What's the real evidence? Probably not so much. And what's the evidence against it? And how can you start to balance your thoughts? In that way, what you do is, instead of spiraling down with one negative thought leading to another, leading to another, leading to another, you're catching it and you're spiraling up. And over time, that 95% of automatic thoughts will shift towards kind of being more balanced, if not then more positive. So you probably have heard that people do things like affirmations.
Yeah.
Affirmations are great, but you need to believe them and you need to connect with the feeling. So if you don't believe an affirmation, so if I'm saying to myself every day in the mirror, I'm awful, I'm awful, I'm awful, and then I just say an affirmation logically, I'm amazing, I'm amazing, I'm amazing, I don't really believe it. But I could have a more balanced thought and say, do you know what? Okay, there's room for improvement, but actually I'm good enough as I am. And as I work towards my goals, I can just create a new version of myself. That's believable, that's true, and it's less balanced. It's more balanced. So I think working on your thoughts is one of the key elements. And secondly, probably with athletes that you work with, visualization is such a powerful tool. So another fun fact here, our brain can't tell the difference between something that's real and something that's imagined. So you can use your visualization to your power. So if you think about what you're trying to create, whether it's the best version of yourself, or a certain goal that you're working towards, really connect with it, but connect with the feeling, and that will help to shift kind of your thoughts and then what you do. So another thing I encourage people to do is, if you think about your goal achieved self, what would they be feeling, thinking and doing? So write down about 50 things. Take your time with this. And then look at that list and say, right, what can I start to do in the now? And as you start to tick things off and make them a part of your everyday experience, you'll start to notice a shift in your mindset and how you approach things.
That's brilliant. How long do you normally give yourself to do like the process of affirmations, for example?
So some people say that it takes between 30 and 60 days to create a habit. But the key thing is the feeling. So if it's just something you're doing just logically and you're not connecting with how that feels, then it's going to take longer. So I'd say give something at least 30 days and really kind of immerse yourself in that experience.
Is that related to habits?
It can be related to habit. So often the mistake that people make with habit building is they just focus on the behaviour. So, okay, I'm just going to get in the gym. I'm going to get in the gym and I'm going to do that for 30 days and that's it. It's going to completely change my whole life. But what they don't work on, which they kind of need to work on to make fulfilling habits, is the mindset, which is the thoughts and the emotions. So, there will be things that can spiral you back into your old patterns because we are creatures of habit. And that's at 95%, which includes the beliefs that we have about ourselves, the way that we approach the world. So rather than just focusing on behavior, focus on the behavior, but there's also a why. You want to achieve a goal because you feel like it's going to give you something emotionally, but also in terms of the way that you see yourself. So I'd say focus on that bit of the hot cross bun as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick break, play you some Maz Mars. What a segment. Oh my God, I'm going to watch that back. I'll be right back after this. See you in a bit, folks.
This is the Halftime Show with Omar Adori on Pulse 95.
Sure is that time. And it's that kind of vibe here on the Halftime Show on Pulse 95 Radio. I'm here with the fantastic Dr. Rina. She's here in the studio and she's taking your questions. on everything regarding well-being, mental health, mental fitness, mindset, managing life stresses. How we are managing to get all this in 1 hour is special, and that is all credit to her for being here in the studio in the Heart of Charge. And if you do miss the shows, don't worry, you can catch all of our episodes on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud if you like a podcast, or if you prefer a visual and want to see Dr. Rina in the flesh, then head over to our YouTube channel, check out Pulse 95 Radio, and her episode is going to be out there, and I can't wait. I'm personally going to watch it back because I already enjoy some of the things that she's been talking about, and maybe I can even apply one or two of those things in my daily habits, especially the way we start off. And I like the traffic light and the opposite hand. I like it all. Anyway, Dr. Rina, coaches have coaches. When it comes down to psychology, when it comes down to your profession, when it comes down to the importance of therapy, how important is it for you to have someone to go and talk to?
It's extremely important. I think a misconception is that perhaps therapists or psychologists or coaches have their life all figured out. Not the case, really. We are evolving as much as everyone else is. So we're constantly pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. We can go through periods of self-doubt where we question ourselves. For us as psychologists, we want to make sure we're working in the most ethical way. So, when it comes to self-care, our support network is extremely important. So for me personally, I have a supervisor where I go and anonymously talk about my cases, and that's really just to check my own practice. And then, sometimes this surprises people, but psychologists actually have their own personal therapy. And when we train, particularly counselling psychologists, we have to have therapy. And there's two reasons for that. One is so we understand what it's like to be a client. But secondly, it also helps us to make sure that we are not bringing our stuff into the room. Because, often we're talking about emotive things. It's easy for us as humans to get triggered as well. So we're not blank canvases as much as we like to maybe believe that. So, really thinking about self-care is important. It's huge.
It's massive. And when you want to, let's say, work out, you go to the gym to aesthetically look good. But when you want to train your mental fitness, where do you go?
So for me, I look at my hand. So I use this with people. So if you think about your hand, everything in the palm of your hand are your coping strategies. So that might be things that you do for yourself, whether it's going to the gym, going for a walk, maybe something creative, having a day out, going on holiday. So all the things that you can kind of self-manage. And then you think about the 5 people or 5 places that you can go to speak to somebody. So that might be a supervisor, it might be a best friend, it might be a therapist, etc., etc. So some probably in the profession and then some outside of the profession. And if we think about COVID, I think a lot of health professionals and mental health professionals have been dealing with what we call secondary trauma. So you want to also think about emergency services, and there's no shame in that. It's just about the earlier you can access support, the better. Therapy doesn't have to be at crisis point. Therapy can be just a space to reflect. It can be a place to get your thoughts out, to gain new insight, to understand yourself better, to kind of develop, to think about your relationships. So it doesn't have to necessarily even be for a specific purpose or goal. And that's it. You kind of want to, if you're doing the traffic light system, you'll be checking in with yourself. And if you're having more like amber and red days, you might just want to think about, is there someone I need to speak to here?
How important is it to speak to someone and have the courage to speak?
I think it's super important. And if you aren't ready to speak yet, think about other ways to process emotions. So things like journaling. Maybe some people are more physical, so they might do something like a gym. Because what you can also do is have that social element there as well. So you want to be thinking about not just any support network, but safe support networks. And when I say safe, I mean emotionally safe. Who do you trust? Who can you be yourself around? Because I also hear this a lot where people think, they've got a really supportive family, friends, partners, but they don't want to burden them. So that's where therapy can also be really useful, because it's someone impartial, it's someone that doesn't know your life. I see myself as not an expert of your life, but someone that brings in expertise. My clients are always the expert on their lives. I just help to kind of navigate them in exploring what it is that they need.
Yusuf here has got a question for you. Yusuf is a very talented footballer that I happen to coach, and he's asking you, isn't it important to battle those inner demons though? Not saying therapy doesn't help, but isn't it the battle of the learning process?
Yeah, so I think there's a misconception around therapy sometimes. And I've heard this where you kind of walk into a space and there's a misconception that a therapist is either going to tell you what to do or they're going to sit there and go,
How far off is it from that?
It's very far off,
Yeah.
but you have to choose the right therapist.
Right.
So I think even as a mental health professional, it's really hard to navigate that field, just like coaching.
Yeah.
You know, there can be a coach who's had 6 weeks experience versus someone like yourself with 20 years experience. So, you know, you want to look at their credentials, their qualifications. The first session should also always be what we call an assessment session, where the therapist is trying to get to know you, but you're also trying to get to know them to see if it's a good fit. Because at the basis of any therapy is the therapeutic relationship.
Right.
So you always got to think about who you connect to. Do you feel safe? Do you feel like you can open up to them? And in terms of battling the inner demons, but that could be a space where you do that too. Because when you bring the demons out, you can actually look at them more objectively. When they're in us, it's really hard. I suppose we've all had those moments where our thoughts are just racing, we can't really think straight. But once we take some time and reflect, then you can kind of decide. So you get more of a helicopter view on your life and what's working well, but also what are the areas for improvement.
Wow. You know what? That was amazing. It sure was. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll play some old school Black Street No Diggity, and we'll be right back after this. What a fantastic show so far. And lucky for you, we got one more segment.
This is the halftime show with Omar Adori on Pulse 95.
What is that time? And you know what? I'm really sad it's almost full time on the halftime show. We've had a great time with Dr. Rina here, who's been talking all about mental health, well-being, mindset, managing life stresses, and even behind the scenes. Oh my God, I am taking full advantage of the knowledge this sister has right here, and she's definitely adding a lot of light to the show. Doctor, let me ask you, Yusuf actually asked a good question. It's also something that I think on this part of the world there's a big stigma regarding mental health and the importance of being able to talk and handle things and also be vulnerable enough to speak about things. With that, do we sometimes almost avoid something that we know we need the most?
We can, I think that, especially when it comes to anxiety or our moods, avoidance is a way that we can cope. But avoidance isn't a good long-term strategy.
Right.
Because we can avoid, but it doesn't mean that it's not there anymore. So I think what you want to be thinking about is how can you healthily start to challenge things. So let's say, if I give you an analogy, let's say I've had a phobia. If I think of it a bit like a triangle, I can start with the things that maybe make me feel less anxious. So, you know, going to a therapist, for example, and talking about my mental health is just not something I want to do right now.
Right.
It might be small conversations. It might be maybe some education or reading up on anxiety or low mood. It might be socializing and having that outlet where I can express an emotion in a safe way. But also, we don't force conversations around mental health. So, you know, we can ask people, how are you and how are you really? But we can also say to people, when you're ready, I'm here. Is there anything I can do to help you? Shall we go and look into services together? So there is an element of people feeling like they're in control of what happens too.
Yusuf here said, Arsenal is our therapy, right, coach? Hey, listen, Yusuf, it can be sometimes, but they can stress me out as well. As well, Abdullah saying, and Condado. Yes, Abdullah, I'm not going to leave out my team as well. Yes, Arsenal and Condado both do wonders and do a lot of things to me sometimes. With my coaching. You've got some fantastic things coming up. And I can't wait, actually. I'm very, very excited for that. Can you share with our listeners what things might be on the pipeline, hopefully very soon.
Yeah. So I'm looking to kind of expand what I do. I do actually work with people in Dubai, so I kind of offer international service. But the next step that I'm currently working on is a self-empowerment book. So that is like having a psychologist in your pocket. So it's a blend of what I might do in the therapeutic space, but also kind of my own experience.
Nice.
And the basis of it is relationships.
Okay.
Because I personally believe, and through what I've seen, that the relationship that we have with ourselves is the most powerful thing when it comes to the way that we experience the world.
Nice.
It's like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
So if you can work on that relationship with yourself, you can change your thoughts, your feelings, what you do. And you also think about your support networks as well. So the aim of the book really is to move people towards having a more authentic and genuine connection with themselves. And I can promise if you delve into the book, you'll have emotional shifts and mindset shifts as well.
That's amazing. I can't wait to read it. I'll definitely be buying that when it comes out. And I also want to ask you, where can we follow you?
So Instagram is probably the place right now. So it's it's Dr. Rina, Bajaj, Bajaj. You can also look at my website, which is www.rinabajaj.com.
Amazing.
And I'm going to be doing a lot of interesting things as well. So even if you don't work with me directly, I'm creating a range of different packages that people can delve into.
Amazing.
So it's all go at the moment.
Amazing. I like it. And even though you're based in the UK, you still travel quite a lot to the UAE. You still travel and work with clients all around the world.
Yeah, all around the world. So I specialise in working with high-profile individuals where their lives are very flexible.
Yeah.
So I actually grew up in a household of musicians. So
Okay.
I understand from the inside what it's like too when you're moving towards success.
Yeah.
People in America, UAE, also England and the UK. The great thing about lockdown is it also brought us Zoom on a different level. So you can do some great therapeutic work in that capacity as well. So when I kind of meet with someone, I make a very tailor-made approach for them.
Yeah.
So I want to understand what is it that they want to achieve. And I personally don't believe that people should be in therapy forever. But it's about maybe that step towards moving towards what you can then do in the real world. So I use evidence-based tools and skills and things that people can practically apply to their life. Things like square breathing or, colour spotting.
Yeah.
Takes 2 minutes, but that can make a real big difference to people.
Amazing. You've been a fantastic guest.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
I've loved being here. It's been amazing.
You've been on point as always. This is the second time we've had a conversation.
Yeah.
And it keeps getting better and better. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And that is full time on the Halftime Show. Thank you very much for tuning in. And like I said, if you just tune in at the last part and you do want to catch the episode, Super Mario will be uploading this episode on our YouTube channel, Pulse 95 Radio. And you can find the whole episode on there. And the podcast will be out on Apple, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Guys, you've been great. And Dr. Rina, you've been incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Omar.
If you liked this episode of The Halftime Show, drop a like and subscribe.
95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories. Pulse.